we are going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kelly Rawl, and I am the coordinator for pre-K and family engagement. I have been the coordinator for pre-K for just a couple of years and the coordinator for family engagement for the last 5 or 6 years. Tonight's session is called Developing and Maintaining Trusting Relationships Within the Family. And this is one of our Parent Academy sessions. We're glad that you're here, and we do need a record of your attendance, so please go to the link online and sign in on our Parent Academy guest book. The link will also be in the chat box, so you can scroll back up and find it there. And we're going to go ahead and get started. But before we do, I just want to reiterate a couple of things. One is that my team and I have been trained by Practical Parent Education to share this information with you. And we are not in any way, shape, or form claiming to be perfect parents, because we're not. And I don't really think there is any such thing as a perfect parent. We are just doing the best we can with what we have. And Fatina, I see that you're online. May I add you as a host so you can watch for new people who join us? Oh, look at that. She was there, but now she's gone. In that case, I'm going to reshare. So as I was saying, we are not by any means perfect parents. We all just do the best we can with what we have at the time. And I would like to think that if I knew back then what I know now about parenting, I would have been a better parent. But that's all hindsight. And all we can do is move forward now. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit of wisdom that we learned during our training and with this material, but I'll also add in a few comments about my own experience as a parent and now a grandparent raising a grandchild. Remember to sign in on our Parent Academy guest book if you haven't already done that. Let's take a look at this quote. In the healthy family, trust is regarded as a precious possession, carefully developed and nurtured as both children and parents profess through the various stages of family life together. Do you agree or disagree? Feel free to turn your mic on and join the conversation. Well, I will tell you that what this says to me is that trust exists in healthy families. And it doesn't matter if you're the adult or the child. Trust goes both ways, and it's important to everyone in the family, even if you don't have the language to express it. And I'm going to check again for a new participant. There is Fatina. Fatina, may I add you as a co-host so you can help me watch for new participants? Now I'm going back to the presentation. I apologize for that.
Maurice Miss.
So we just finished talking about the quote. And today, as we um, think about parenting and the issue of trust within parent as a parent and as a child, we have a couple of objectives to learn today. I'd just like for you to take a look at those, and I will just speak about a couple of them. But for one thing, we want you to understand that um, as an individual develops their sense of trust, this trust comes primarily from the caregiver. So when you have children, you're the caregiver, and the trust that your children have is going to mirror what you have, uh, what you are modeling for them. Um, we want you to trust yourselves as parents. Remember what I said, we all do the best we can with what we have. And we want to share with you the elements of parent-child relationships that help build bonds of trust, and then to be aware of the various life transitions that can disrupt trust, because trust can be broken, but it can also be rebuilt, and it is never too late to do that. I'm also going to click up here because I will be sharing a folder with you at the end. And this is the handout that we would normally give you if we were meeting in person. But you'll notice over here, here's the first quote that we talked about. Here's my contact information. And then if you go down to page 2, here are the lesson objectives that I just shared with you. Here are some things we're going to talk about in the middle, and then a few places for you to write notes if you like. But those will be in the folder that I share with you at the end. Take a look at that teddy bear on the left-hand side. Imagine that there is a blankie there too, because oftentimes children have a favorite blankie, they have a favorite stuffed animal, and these are much loved items for a lot of children. I am hearing an echo. I hope that goes away. So what do you think that your child would feel as they snuggle with the blankie or their teddy bear or elephant or doll or whatever it is? What do you think they feel?
You can, I guess, unmute
Yeah.
yourself and say something.
Fatina, am I muted?
No, no, I'm asking the parents to unmute themselves to answer.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Fatina, would you keep an eye on the people who are trying to join and add them?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. So if I were a child and I was snuggling with that cute little teddy bear, then I would probably feel more safe and secure. That that little bear might comfort me if I feel um, stressed or anxious about something, if I feel sad. It may even help me to feel companionship when I'm lonely. And it also might bring me a sense of joy. And the same thing would be true of that blanket. But the blankie might also, both of these items would give me a sense of maybe confidence to be able to go into a new environment or to a new situation. Look at the book on the right. This book is called Guess How Much I Love You. But it really isn't the title that is important. It's a wonderful book, but it isn't the title that's important. One thing that you might notice at home is that there's a favorite book that your child just loves to read all the time, and sometimes it's tempting to get tired of reading the same book over and over again. But what we know is that children feel safety within boundaries, and books give children a sense of safety. They're they can predict what's going to happen at the end, so they feel a sense of security. They feel comfortable with their knowledge of the story, and they can respond positively to repetition, silly or funny, cheerful, warm stories. These boundaries and predictability within a parent-child relationship offer safety, security, and trust. And we know trust is a very important part of a healthy relationship and a healthy family. So think about trust. And if you have a piece of paper, you might want to just take a moment to write this down. Describe someone from your past whom you trusted. How did they make you feel? Think about that for a minute. I'm going to give you some think time here. If you have something to write with, make a few notes about the person that you trusted and how they made you feel. Now think about a time when you were not trusted, when someone did not trust you. How did that make you feel? Again, make a few notes on your paper. Would anybody like to share how they felt when they were trusted? Well, when I did this exercise and reflected on people that I trusted and then occasionally when people did not trust me, I realized once again how valuable trust is. It's not always just given right away, it's often earned. But it's like starting out with 100 in the grade book at the beginning of the school year. You have that 100, but then as the year goes on, that 100 gets lost. And then if you get too far behind and your grades become too low, it's hard to get that 100 back. It might even seem impossible. But it takes extra effort and hard work to earn it back. It can be done. But you have to keep working. You have to be intentional, and you have to have a lot of grit and perseverance. Trust is the same way. You have to have a lot of grit and perseverance to rebuild trust when it's lost. So when I think about the person that I trusted, I felt safe and secure with them. I could talk to them, and I could know that what I told them wasn't going to go any further. They weren't going to spread a lot of gossip. And I also knew that they would not judge me and they wouldn't make fun of me. But in a time when I wasn't trusted, that made me feel very insecure. It made me second guess all of my decisions, and I lost confidence in myself, just like the other person had lost confidence in me. So you can see that all these feelings are kind of compare and contrast. They're on opposite ends of the spectrum. So keep that in mind as we go forward. Take a look at this chart. So in this diagram or visual, you'll see that at the bottom, you see trust versus mistrust. And when you look at this, this visual represents the stages of psychosocial development. And at the bottom where you see trust and mistrust, that is actually what happens at infancy. This visual was developed by Erik Erikson, and it has been around a long time, but it is still proving itself true to this day. So Um, if you start at the bottom, this is when you're in an infant. And then as you go higher, it's like being on a ladder. And at the top is when you are an adult. And in order for you to go from one stage to the next stage, then you have to, there's usually a crisis that happens. And it has to be resolved before you move on to the next step. So on the bottom where it says trust versus mistrust, the infant has to develop trust for their caregiver before they can move on and become autonomous. If that does not happen and the infant does not develop that sense of trust for their caregiver, then the step that they arrive on next time is that of shame and doubt. So you can see that the basis of your whole adult life ends up being the relationship of trust between you and your caregiver. So just remember that before you can move from one step to the next, there's a crisis. And by crisis, we just mean that there's an event that happens. So when you cry, your caregiver comes and picks you up, or gives you a bottle, or checks your diaper, or wraps the blanket around you, or rocks you to sleep. But when those things don't happen consistently over time, then the infant will develop a sense of mistrust. But if it does happen consistently over time, then the infant develops this sense of trust. So how would you define trust? Here are a few common responses. Would you agree with all of those? I think that the one that I can relate to the most is actually the first one, and it's a relationship without fear. And so as an adult, I know that I am in a trusting relationship when I can speak without fear of being ridiculed or judged. I can speak without being punished. That doesn't mean there won't be consequences for what I say, but I feel safe enough to take risks and have an honest conversation with whoever it is that I'm speaking to. So I can talk about my strongest feelings and emotions without worrying about the consequences or what the other person will think. We already said that trust begins at birth. And so when trust begins at birth, then this happens through the process of bonding and attachment. We actually did a session last year on bonding and attachment, and the recording is posted on our Parent Academy website under recorded sessions. So if you haven't seen that, this is a great one to go back and watch. But if you look at this picture, mom or the caregiver is making eye contact with the baby, and she's feeding the bottle, and her hand is touching the baby's hand. Actually, the baby is clutching the mom's finger. I remember that feeling. That is just the sweetest feeling. It's one of the things that I cherish most about being a parent. So you can tell that in this picture, the baby trusts the parent, and she's being dependable. She's meeting his needs as a caregiver, as a mom, and just as a human. She's being very human right now. However, what happens if trust is not there? Well, then that baby might look at her differently. And he or she might view the world with mistrust and feel anxious and insecure. He might have a low self esteem and be unwilling to take risks. He might be afraid to go into the arms of another person. So that separation anxiety can come into play. That doesn't mean that um, babies with separation anxiety don't have a trusting relationship with their parents. They're just very dependent on their parents, and they're cautious about going to other caregivers. But we've talked a lot about how trusting relationships can be built with infants and parents, but that trusting relationship has to continue being nurtured throughout the rest of the child's life. And you could keep doing this, building this bond of trust um, throughout your child's growth just by using warm touches and communicating in a way that is satisfying for both of you. Um, you can be present for the child. So when they need you, it's important to be there. And it's important to set reasonable limits for the child, just like reading that story had uh, boundaries. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end, uh, and it was predictable. The ending was predictable. Well, we want to have those similar sets of boundaries for our children. And we want to be careful and try to regulate our own emotions so that when it's time to sit down and have a conversation with your kiddo, that you can do that without expressing angry or malicious words. Another good thing to do to help build trust between you and your older child is by having rituals and traditions in your home and family. For instance, and this one's really hard, but sitting down to eat dinner at night with the whole family. Uh, Everything is so fast paced these days that sometimes it is hard to sit down and have a family dinner. You almost have to plan them specifically. Um, but then there can be other routines and rituals that you can put into place that will help build trust between you and your child, such as having a morning routine. You know, teach your child to get up and brush their teeth and put their clothes on and come down for breakfast and eat a good breakfast and make sure that you're providing that breakfast for them as often as possible. Um, or maybe there's a bedtime routine instead of a morning routine. Actually, you need both of those, but maybe the bedtime routine is where your kiddo reads by themselves for a little while, and then as the parent, you go up and talk to them about what they read, and then you kiss them goodnight, and everybody goes to sleep. Um, those kinds of things are really important, and they help to build trust. But then the last thing I want to mention is that it's really important to maintain your love during those times of conflict, because no matter what your child does, you want them to know that you still love them, and that just because they did something um, unacceptable, then that doesn't mean that you stop loving them. It just means that you have to teach them a better way to do it. Okay, so this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And, I first learned about this in college, and I kind of have a funny story to go along with it. But you'll see that by looking at this pyramid diagram, that the foundation of the whole pyramid is your physiological needs. And so this is um, basic survival needs like food and shelter and sleep and um, safety. Those are just basic physiological needs. Then when you look at number two, um, then safety needs are important. And between safety and psychosocial needs at the bottom, those build a strong foundation for a trusting relationship and for one's life in general. And then the next two levels on the pyramid um, are social needs and self-esteem needs. So this is where you're developing confidence and the courage and the um, self-respect for yourself that you need to go on to the very top of the pyramid, which is self-actualization. So all of my children are adults now, but when my daughter, I'm just going to call her Honey, um, when um, she was an adult and she was between relationships. You know, I was trying to help her make better choices when it came to her significant other. And so I actually remembered this from college, and I drew the pyramid out. And at the bottom, where it says psychosocial needs, I wrote, she needs someone who could help provide for her. That means they need to be gainfully employed and not owe any back taxes. And then for in the next section where it says safety, I said, look for someone who doesn't have addictive behaviors like drug or alcoholism. They're not abusive, whether it's physically, mentally, um, verbally, or any other kind of abuse. And then under social needs, I said, so here you want somebody to be somebody who loves you, but they're not possessive of you. So they don't prohibit you from spending time with your other family members or with your other friends, and they won't abandon you when things get tough. And then the esteem needs is where I told her that you want someone who's going to be supportive and they lift you up and not put you down. And they want you to be the best you can be. And then finally at the top, I said, this person, you know, at their best would be the one who encourages creativity. And then together you can solve the problems that come up in life, because there are always going to be problems. So, you know, I gave her this little piece of paper and I said, these are all the lessons that I learned in life. And as far as choosing a mate or a spouse or a partner for life. And, you know, I learned these things the hard way, and I don't want you to learn them the hard way. So this is my motherly advice to you. And so I really just expected that piece of paper to go in the trash. But do you know that she held on to that piece of paper? And she even tells other people that her mom drew her a pyramid of how to choose a good man. That those were her words. And she doesn't have that piece of paper anymore, but she still tells people that that I did that for her. And she doesn't really remember all the words that were on it. But, you know, as of right now, she's in a good relationship. And I think that the person that she's with meets this criteria. So that's my funny story for Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But it did enable me to give her that advice. And so just for that, I'm happy that I learned it and that I was able to use it. Because, you know, some of the things you learn in college, you always think, when am I ever going to use this? But I actually did use it. So we learn about these human needs that start at the bottom and they build up to self-actualization. And Maslow's theory was that all these things at the bottom had to take place in order for the person to be self-actualized, or in simple terms, happy and feel like they have a productive life. So since we're on the video, we're not going to do a group activity, but I would like for you to think about, in a trusting relationship, how do you feel? And what does that look like in behavior that you're willing to, in the behavior that you exhibit to other people? And then if you're not in a trusting relationship, you can see on the right-hand side the behaviors that you might exhibit or that other people might see in you. And you can see the polar opposites that they are. So if on the left, in a trusting relationship, then I'm more trusting of myself and of other people. But if I look on the left hand side, I see that I would if I'm not in a trusting relationship, I might lack confidence in myself or other people. Um, I can be open and honest, but if I'm not in a trusting relationship, then I might be um, suspicious of others, and I might be unwilling to take the risk of um, expressing my feelings and emotions. And I might have difficulty with reciprocal relationships. So if I don't trust the other person, uh, then they might stop trusting me. And so it could be a vicious circle that goes round and round. We talked about this a little bit earlier, um, building trust after infancy. So I'm not going to spend any more time on this topic, but I do want to remind you that as kids get older, that trust is still a very critical family issue, and that your child will continue to learn how to have a trusting relationship based on the relationship that they have with you. So don't ever underestimate the importance of that trusting relationship between you and your child. So let's talk about some ways that you can do that. Let's think about this situation. If you have a 2-year-old and they want to set the table, but whenever they set the table, they drop stuff and they break things. So can you relate to that? I can relate to that. How can you build trust with your 2-year-old in this situation? If it were me, I might use plastic silverware instead of regular metal silverware, so that whenever it falls on the ground, it's not going to hurt the child, and it won't make a lot of noise, and it's not a big deal. I might use plastic plates or paper plates instead of regular plates until the child gets older. But if they drop something, then I'm going to say, "Oh, you dropped that paper plate. Why don't you pick it up and put it on the table? That's okay. Um, you can fix your own mistake. Just pick it up and put it back on the table." So in that way, you're not just berating them and making them feel ashamed of what happened, but you turn it into a learning situation. Now, let's say, fast forward to where your child is 8 and they want to sleep over at a friend's house, but they get homesick whenever she's away from you overnight. So, you have to decide, are you going to let your child go to their friend's house and spend the night, knowing that they're going to call you at midnight and say, "I want to come home, come get me"? Well, maybe you practice staying at the friend's house for longer periods of time. So you might start with an hour and then go to 2 hours and then 3 hours and then 4 hours. And then maybe the whole night, and say, "Okay, before you go to bed, FaceTime me, that way we can say goodnight." Or, if they do get homesick and you have to go get them, then you say, "I know you didn't stay the whole night this time, but maybe next time you will." And just really try not to make your child feel ashamed of missing their mommy. So then think about situation number 3. This one's hard for me because I do have a teenager living with me at home. Your adolescent wants to attend a party, but you fear it will not be properly chaperoned and alcoholic beverages might be served. Okay, I want to build trust, but at the same time, I have to use good judgment. If that's what I really think is going to be the situation at the party, then I'm just going to have to say no. That maybe next time it'll be a different situation, and my job is to keep you safe. And if I feel like you're not going into a safe environment, then I'm going to have to say no. But as she gets older, I'm going to have to demonstrate my trust for her by saying, you can go to the party, but make sure you keep your phone turned on. Make sure you keep your location turned on. And you have to promise that if anything gets out of hand, if you feel uncomfortable, if people are making bad choices and you don't want to get caught up in it, which you shouldn't, then you need to call me and I'll come get you, and you won't be in trouble. You'll be doing the right thing by calling me and having me come get you. So, the the hope is that she gets to the party, everything goes fine. There were adults there, and it is everything's good. But if she gets there and she stays for a while and she says, maybe you ought to come get me. I think some kids are drinking, and I know that's not the right thing to do. And then I would just have to go get her and say, and really praise her for making that adult choice. I know it was tempting to stay and have fun for the rest of the evening with your friends, but you made a good choice here, and I just want you to know I'm really proud of you. So the more you praise your child when they make good choices, the better off it's going to be. So trust can be broken, and this can happen in a lot of ways, with inconsistent discipline, breaking promises, um, being really demanding and not ever compromising, or with emotional or physical abuse. So once you have broken a bond of trust, and you know this from your relationships with other adults, it's really hard to rebuild that trust, but you can do it. So here are some strategies. Make a fresh start. Say, I might tell my teenager, you know, um, I made a mistake and I'm really sorry. So if you make a mistake then you just have to own it and say, tomorrow's a new day. I'm just going to start over and I'm going to try to do better from here on out. Then I'm going to have to work on keeping my promises. And I do that by keeping one promise at a time. So I'm going to promise not to yell at her when she forgets to start the dishwasher. I probably wouldn't yell at her for that, but that's just an example. And so then I just say, honey, you forgot to start the dishwasher. So go ahead and start it. I can promise to cooperate. And by cooperate, I mean like almost negotiate sometimes. Maybe if she does this, then she's allowed to do that. Or it is kind of like negotiating. But I can also be consistent and positive with my discipline. That's going to help build trust. I can stay cool and collected when we're having difficult conversations, and sometimes that's really hard. Uh, when things get heated, everybody gets heated, and when someone else gets angry, then it's hard not to respond with anger. But then that's just something that I have to work on. And then I have to give her the opportunity to make mistakes and grow from them. That is one of the things, that's one of the purposes of childhood, is to learn that when you make mistakes, you can fix them. But children can break your trust too. And they can do this by lying or keeping secrets or not keeping their promises. But you can use those same strategies when you've broken your child's trust, when you've broken the trust bond on your end. You can use some of those same strategies with your children, or your children can use those same strategies to rebuild their trust. So they can make a fresh start. They can keep one promise at a time and admit when they make a mistake, and then agree to be open and communicative. So there is a fine line though, because sometimes being too trusting can be dangerous for our kids. And you know, we live in a dangerous world right now. It seems like people that you think you can trust cannot be trusted. And it is disappointing, but it is a sad truth. And so we do have to teach our children to be somewhat suspicious, to be careful about um, who they give their trust to. So this is where we talk to them about stranger danger and what's inappropriate for another adult toward a child, um, and what to do when things like that seem to be happening. Um, so we do want children to know that they can rebuild their trust. I want you to know that you can rebuild trust with your own children. And then we all just have to remember to maintain that healthy suspicion with total strangers and watch out for inappropriate behavior. So that brings us to the end of our presentation for tonight. This is a quote that I have heard hundreds of times, but it is so true. There are only two lasting bequests that we can hope to give our children. One of these is roots, and the other is wings. And one of the greatest gifts that we can give our children is a root system of trust, where they feel safe and secure, self-confident, so that they can fly someday. Trust is the foundation from where self-esteem, closeness, and confidences are learned. So remember, the two things that we want to leave behind for our children are roots and wings. Now here, let me go back. In our folder that I'm going to share with you, there is a bookmark, How Parents Can Earn Their Children's Trust. And if you take a look at this, it's really, really very good. For instance, be true to your word. So don't make a promise you know you can't keep. And I know sometimes when you just want to be able to say yes to something, but you just can't. Don't make false promises. Be a good role model for your child. And this means modeling how to start over and recovering from your mistakes. Stick to your plans and don't use lies as a cop-out. Respect privacy. Don't listen in on their phone conversations. Don't open mail or read their journals. Now, there are times when that kind of thing is warranted. And so if you need to do those things, then definitely do them. If you have a reason to believe something is going awry. But then you can also gain their trust by not telling all their secrets to all your friends. Don't comment on overheard conversations. And I'll tell you what, I've heard one side of a conversation before and made a terrible assumption, and it's hard to recover from that. So as much as you want to listen in, be careful if you do that. And don't use information that has been shared to hurt your child at a later time. So just remember that let bygones be bygones and try not to hold a grudge. And then finally, give your child responsibility with clear expectations and consequences, and learn to let go gradually. That whole party scenario, there comes a time where your children are going to have to learn that they have choices to make, and we want them to always make the right choice, but they don't always. And so they're going to have to learn the natural consequences of making the wrong choice. So I thought that this bookmark was really relevant to what we were talking about tonight. So I hope that you will go to our folder and download it. And that brings us to the end. And so I just have a little bit of information for you. If you're on your phone, you could take a screenshot of this, but the information is really good. So remember to sign into our Parent Academy guest book so that we know you were here. Having presentations like this and holding classes for Parent Academy isn't free. And if we want the district to continue funding our activities, then we have to be able to show that we're reaching families. So it's really important for you to sign into our guest book. And then keep an eye on the Parent Academy Parent Academy calendar to find out what is coming up soon and what you might be interested in participating in. For instance, we have on November 1st from 12 to 1 or so, we have Tall Cop Says Stop, and he's going to be talking about trends of vaping, and he's going to explain the difference between THC and marijuana and Delta 8 and Delta 10 and all kinds of things that you might not know about. These things are prevalent in our society, and his motto is, you can't stop what you don't know. So come join us for that one and learn about it. And if you can't make it to that one, that's during the day, and you could just come for part of that. Maybe you can jump in on your lunch hour, but then we'll have another session in January, and I think it's on the 11th, but it starts at 7 in the evening. So this is going to be a great opportunity for us. We are here to help you when you need us. So the contact information for the Family Engagement Department team is below. So I do hope that you've kept a screenshot of this. If you have any questions for us, please let us know. If you have needs on those basic needs of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, please get in touch with one of us, because we can help you connect with some resources that might help you provide some of those needs and then be able to move up the pyramid. So I want to thank you very much for joining us today. And I also would like to know if you have any questions. We are finishing a little earlier than I thought we would, but Fatina, did you see any questions in the chat box?
No, there is no questions, but I put in the chat box the links for the materials from today's class, and
Yes.
the link, and I put also the link of the Parent Academy calendar. Also, is in the messages in the text box. And
Thank you.
also, I would like to notify everyone that we have the same lecture in other languages on Wednesday at 4:30. And I put the links as well in the messages in the text box. Also, we are. I guess you believe. I believe that you have received emails that has all of these links for the other languages: French, Arabic, and Spanish.
Thank you
so much.
very.
Sorry.
Thank you very much for joining us. We hope you have a good rest of your evening, and we hope that you will come visit us again.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you
You're
can.
welcome.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself if you need to just speak instead of writing.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Trevor
Thank you.
and Vivian and Shefal. Thank you all for coming and attending. We're so happy that you
Thank you,
joined,
kid.
and I hope that you have all of you registered attendance, please. That you signed in the link that I put. And if you still need the link, I can put it for you again. Anybody needs the link? All right.
Okay.
All
Thank you.
Thank
right.
you, Kelly.
That was
Thank you,
great.
Kathy.
Thank you
Bye
both.
bye.
I appreciate you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye
Mhm.
bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.